Did you know that our minds remain trapped in the Stone Age? Right now, as you view this video, you might seem like a refined, contemporary person enjoying coffee, but inside your mind, an ancient version of you still escaping a predator and fearing future starvation is still fully functioning. Even though human civilization has made remarkable progress over thousands of years, our brains still run on the basic design established hundreds of millennia ago. It is comparable to an outdated software that no longer gets any upgrade. That is why the worry, pressure, and sporadic impulsive feelings you experience daily all stem from primal survival mechanisms. These formerly beneficial impulses that ensured our survival in nature eons ago now, for people in 2026, conflict with contemporary life and cause ongoing glitches. In this session, we'll examine 7 basic drives that have become obsolete yet still manipulate us like unseen marionettes. To begin, let's tackle that intense desire for carbohydrates that strikes you when you see a short sword. Among the viewers, some undoubtedly relish sugary treats, chocolate, fizzy drinks, and similar items. Certain individuals indulge without remorse, adopting a such is life perspective, whereas others berate themselves, questioning why they cannot resist the temptation of sugar. However, this is entirely not your blame. Your brain has been programmed that way since the start. Imagine the Stone Age period many millennia in the past. In those times, food represented the greatest luxury and the most prized asset for people. During an era lacking refrigerators or corner stores, humans had to eat whatever they could acquire on the spot. But not every food item held equal worth. Though crunchy bugs or foliage occasionally satisfied hunger, the real price for our forebears was anything extremely sugary or highly rich in fat. The explanation is simple. Sugar provides instant and powerful energy as soon as it enters the body. When involved in hunting or fleeing threats, no energy source was more effective, causing our bodies to develop a strongly favorable reaction to sugary foods. Even when immediate power was unnecessary, any excess was deposited as fat following intake. Given that hunger was a perpetual danger, body fat acted as the supreme survival guarantee against uncertain scarcity. This is the reason every time a sweet item shows up, our mind urgently commands, consume it immediately, there may be no tomorrow. In an untamed environment where hazards lurked in all directions, stumbling upon perfectly ripe wild berries or honey retrieved from a beehive at great personal peril provided the most essential sustenance. At that time, it was a matter of life and death for survival, yet regrettably the situations we face nowadays are completely different from those of that period. The majority of people watching this video never suffer from a lack of food. Furthermore, even during financial difficulties, the likelihood of your experiencing famine as severe as that endured by early humans is quite low. In modern times, snatching a piece of jelly or chocolate from beside your bed doesn't constitute a fight for survival. It simply boils down to having enough self-discipline to withstand these basic impulses. In the present day, eating sugary treats, whenever they appear, produces the reverse effect from what it did in prehistoric eras. At minimum, you merely put on pounds. At maximum, it damages your well-being through multiple lifestyle-related illnesses. Instinct was originally meant for survival, but nowadays it leads to disease. What makes contemporary food so tempting and packed with sugar? This is directly connected to the inherent human inclination to intensely desire sugar. It's not that today's eating habits became sugary and subsequently we acquired a sweet tooth. Our ancestors instinctively understood from ages past that people are essentially incapable of resisting sugar if it's present. Turning it down is out of the question. Your natural impulses not only undermine you, but it's also quite discouraging that organizations within a capitalist system take advantage of this impulse for massive financial gain. While the first problem is overeating harming the physical body, the second is an innate drive that damages the psyche. A paradoxical feature of contemporary existence is that even though we enjoy the richest prosperity humanity has ever known, our minds are perpetually disturbed by numerous worries. This arises from the negativity bias deeply wired into our brain circuitry. Predictably, this impulse also served a vital survival purpose in ancient times. Yet, in our intricate modern-day world without predators, it merely adds superfluous hardship to an otherwise tolerable life. We often hear and rationally agree that we ought to be grateful for all aspects of life, yet in reality, thankfulness seems like a task that needs frequent prompting. Our brains are not built to generate pleasant feelings. On the contrary, they are configured in a completely different manner. This is evident in our regular interactions. When saying goodbye, rather than wishing someone be happy, we frequently say things such as look out for traffic, don't catch a chill, or be careful of the rain we warn about. Possible. Perils much more often. Because we sense that alerting others to potential risks is a more natural and essential form of greeting than expressing good wishes for happiness, the early primitive environment was rife with severe and urgent threats. Abrupt natural calamities like tremors or inundations, predators unexpectedly hiding in the undergrowth, competing clans attempting to seize provisions, and even starvation perpetually threatened the existence of you and your family at all times. In such a dangerous setting, what was the best approach for staying alive? It was to scrutinize everything and focus all awareness on unfavorable or risky aspects. Picture two early humans. One is hyper alert as he walks. If he notices a pointed rock or a creature's footprint, an early human perceives the danger and heads back, deeply imprinting that event in their memory. In contrast, the other primitive individual maintains a more hopeful perspective. While strolling, he observes. That's a gorgeous tree. Abruptly, he exclaims, "Oh dear, a lion is rushing directly toward me." He looks with awe. Such a majestic and beautiful creature. So, out of these two people, who lived long enough to reproduce, the answer is obvious. The problem is that nowadays, dangers such as being attacked by tigers or dying of hunger are no longer significant threats. Nonetheless, our brain's extremely reactive alarm system continues to function. As a result, we channel that nervous energy into modern issues. Employment stability, social status, being excluded, fear of failing, the opinions of others, and comparable anxieties. Today's world is immensely complicated, with numerous things to take into account. Because the negativity bias is a deeply ingrained instinct in the human mind, not actively fighting, it can result in serious consequences. It's extremely simple to constantly envision negative scenarios, get anxious, and later suffer from anxiety or depression. A typical example of negativity bias is that prior to an important speech or conference, the idea "what if I mess up" appears before any anticipation of doing well. Additionally, we create in our minds the most catastrophic outcome for things that haven't happened yet. During prehistoric eras, imagining and getting ready for possible threats in advance was very advantageous for staying alive. A person who constantly worried, "what if I run into a tiger" before going hunting was more likely to survive if they did face one. But by the year 2026, this overthinking no longer safeguards you. Rather, it drains your strength and hurts your performance. The vague nervousness also experienced when trying something new, the fear of the unfamiliar, is similar. This could be among the oldest instincts of humankind. Our forebears had to learn by trying and failing in all aspects of existence, and the result often directly determined life or death. The easiest method to decrease danger was simple. Just stick to what you know and absolutely avoid everything unfamiliar. That is how we developed a strong terror of the unknown. In ancient times, back in prehistoric days, going into dark and poorly lit places, coming across an unknown creature, or dealing with never-before-seen weather could result in the death of you and your group members. To survive, the best approach was to run away from any novel sensations. This instinct is still written into our genetic code. However, in modern society, it often does more harm than good. Admittedly, it can be said that being careful about unfamiliar alleyways is helpful, but this fear becomes truly damaging when it blocks personal growth. Starting a new romantic partnership, trying different foods, moving to a new town, or encountering strangers, today's society is secure and stable enough that exploring unfamiliar places and embracing unease unlocks many remarkable possibilities. But, in reality, to benefit from these extraordinary chances, we need to override our primitive urges. Consequently, there is a saying that expresses this stark awareness. Most people prefer to live in a known state of unhappiness rather than an unknown state of bliss. Isn't that fascinating? Based on factual evidence, even when the new situation is obviously better, individuals choose to stay in a clearly more suffering familiar circumstance just because it's what they know. And the unfamiliar realm wasn't the only source of fear for our primitive ancestors. Out of the many fears they had, another one that remains strong in us nowadays is the fear of failure. Naturally, even in modern life, there are times when being careful about failing is justified. All in all, though, the fear of failure that we feel is significantly more harmful than useful. The goals of prehistoric people were simple and focused on the immediate. When hunting, the goal involved capturing prey. For reproduction, finding a mate. And when seeking shelter, locating a warm and safe place. In every case, failing to achieve the goal led to death or the termination of one's lineage. The threat was incredibly intense. Across hundreds of millennia in such circumstances, our minds deeply embedded the idea that when you truly want something, failure must be prevented at any expense. Yet, reflect on our aims now in 2026. Most objectives are unrelated to survival. Instead, they concern things like getting a bad grade on an assignment, missing out on a desired promotion, or being rejected by a school you applied to. Obviously, when these things happen, you feel disappointment and upset, but you won't die. However, many people act as if their life is endangered by these small failures. This exaggerated fear of failure is so deeply rooted that even when the situation is just a bit annoying or slightly discouraging, the body undergoes severe panic. Eventually, this impulse makes us hesitate and stops us from taking many opportunities that could have been successful. In olden times, failing also led to a drop in social rank. People have always lived in tribe-centric societies and are naturally social beings. In every group, there was always a hierarchy, and a person's place in that hierarchy directly affected their chances of survival. During prehistoric days, pursuing status was not just for boosting self-esteem, it was essentially about ensuring survival. In the tribe, individuals of higher status got first pick of the best food, safest sleeping spots, and most attractive mates. Conversely, people with low status had to eat leftovers, others threw away or sleep in cold places. In severe cases, they were completely expelled from the group, left alone in a wilderness full of predators, a result that was practically a death sentence. So, in prehistoric times, people would endanger their lives for social rank. I fully understand why they would bet their lives, but as you know, this inclination has not disappeared despite civilization's progress. Actually, modern people crave status even more strongly. Ironically, even though the survival risk tied to status has dropped significantly in current society, high status does bring many benefits. Celebrities get premium treatment everywhere and often receive expensive items for free through sponsorship arrangements. But I want to argue that status is no longer a crucial element for survival. In today's world, having lower social status than others does not cause you to starve. With a normal job, a small side gig, or a modest business, you can live a reasonably prosperous and comfortable life, showing that even if you disregard status entirely, survival is not hard. Nevertheless, we still waste most of our lives pursuing status. This pursuit is mostly about self-satisfaction and barely relates to survival. Often, at life's end, it becomes a pointless competition that people regret, feeling everything is meaningless. The most common and troubling symptom of this status pursuit that we all suffer from is constant comparison. In a world dominated by social media, we are daily overwhelmed by the curated lives of others. The thought, that person is so successful, why aren't I? Do you know where this feeling comes from? Because our brain sees them as having superior status to us and incorrectly believes that we are in danger of being exiled from the group. This comparison mentality ultimately results in anxiety and hopelessness, becoming the most common ailment among people who carry old brains while living in a modern civilization. Even with low status, the desire to at least be part of the group remains a strong ancient instinct. That is precisely the herd instinct. As mentioned earlier, those within the tribe were safe, while a person who became isolated was almost certainly doomed. The human brain evolved in tribal groups and is programmed to closely watch and imitate the behaviors of others nearby. Because successful survivors acted in specific ways, the brain's fundamental logic became, if I copy those actions, I will also survive. At the same time, those who acted against the tribe's norms, like refusing to share food or violating tribal traditions, were immediately expelled. In such an environment, our ancestors would have learned quickly. Sticking with the crowd and aligning with the majority proved to be the most successful survival strategy. In ancient times, this meant cohabitation. In today's world, we are rarely cast out or harmed for being different. Nonetheless, our brain stays extremely wary of deviating from the group. This is why we have such a profound dread of being rejected. That anxious feeling when speaking to a crush, presenting an idea to a customer, or simply attempting to voice our own opinion with assurance. People universally feel statements like, I dislike you, or You don't fit in. This anxiety starts in infancy and continues for our whole existence. It resembles a constant companion. This instinct to follow the crowd serves as a defense mechanism, prompting us to stay unobtrusive and avoid making any waves. If your wish is to fit in with others and you feel uneasy about standing out, be gentle with yourself. You are perfectly normal. Your brain's innate wiring constantly informs you that conforming boosts your chances of staying alive. Even though this guidance is obsolete by the year 2026, your brain cannot separate it from present circumstances. Much like the aversion to ambiguity, this herd behavior often obstructs rather than protects us in modern society. It prevents you from pursuing your true interests or taking risks on innovative projects. Allow me to restate. The function of crowd psychology is not about your contentment, only your survival. The last instinct we'll discuss is identifying patterns that do not truly exist. This stems from the mind's inherent drive to understand its surroundings. During ancient times, the ability to recognize patterns was a decisive element in determining life or death. If you noticed that more colorful fruits cause stomach pain and refrained from eating them, you lived. But if you ignored that men from your tribe who faced tigers never returned, you would perish. Pattern detection can be advantageous or harmful. Similar to the craving for sugar discussed earlier, this process looks for useful patterns such as solitude saves energy and remembers dangerous ones. For instance, that colony has honey but the bees are hostile. It also triggers avoidance. Today, pattern identification, though not a matter of life and death, still holds importance. If we needed to analyze each circumstance afresh every occurrence, our brain would probably become overloaded. Rather, it pre-assembles a mental database and immediately consults it when a similar event happens, all in order to save energy. Yet, this carries a hazardous downside. Identifying patterns can lead us to misunderstand events lacking context or to oversimplify, leading to erroneous judgments. This inclination is especially perilous when we stereotype ideas or people, because the mind yearns for the reassurance of thinking, I grasp this, I comprehend. In prehistoric eras, seeing an animal with jagged teeth necessitated instant escape without hesitation. But how does this relate to our current world? For example, when meeting a person with many tattoos, you might instinctively evaluate and avoid them, assuming that individual appears threatening and malicious. Currently, asserting that physiognomy is a science, or on discovering someone's MBTI result initially and stating you must behave thusly, these are all founded on the same erroneous reasoning. In reality, frequently, whether a person's sports tattoos or their personality inventory outcomes have no connection to their real character, since the brain seeks to protect us, handle information speedily, and preserve strength, it falls back on these generalizations. A dangerous cognitive shortcut. By this point, after reading thus far, you might have started to identify your own habits. These 7 drives are actually profoundly linked, each reinforcing the other in the singular aim of staying alive. However, the main point I desire to convey to you is as follows. The reality is that our brain is merely doing its best. It functions like an extremely effective assistant that has worked for hundreds of thousands of years to guarantee our survival in the wild, creating a finely tuned operating system.